Good afternoon. I'm John Hart, the co-founder of C3 Solutions, the conservative coalition for climate solutions, and the editor of our news magazine, C3. Welcome to another edition of Right Voices, our video and podcast interview series, where we highlight conservative leaders and ideas in the climate debate. Today, we're honored to be joined by Representative Carol Miller, who is serving her first term as the representative of West Virginia's 3rd Congressional District. Congresswoman Miller is a farmer and serves on the House Committee on Ways and Means and the House Select Committee on the Climate Crisis. Congresswoman, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me here.
So one of the things about your background that I found interesting is you like the phrase "cut the bull." Can you elaborate on that? Why did you choose that? Tell us a bit of your story.
Well, boy, what an easy lead in. Since 1994, we have been raising bison, the American buffalo, on our farm. Started out with 5 females and a bull. And after about the first couple of years, I had meat to sell. And so I became very active in the meat processing. I don't do the dead part, but I'm in there when we process the animal. And I was teaching the meat cutters new tricks. They didn't know about fajitas and things that you could do with sirloin. And so I'm in there saying, no, cut it this way and cut this. And so, I'd help them. I'd help weigh things and package things, anything I could do. I had my food handling permit, and it was just such a natural about cut the bull. This stuff in politics is just a bunch of baloney. So when I was in the House of Delegates in West Virginia, it sort of became my motto with politics is cut the bull. And so I, of course, brought that to Congress with me. And I certainly have not changed my stance of being a good conservative person.
Well, Congressman, I commend you for being presently. So I have a farm. I mentioned a few minutes ago, but we don't have any. Well, we have goats. That's not quite any kind of meat processing. So
do you have any milk? Do you milk your goats?
No, they're myotonic fainting goats. We call them the ultimate natural solution. Yeah. So we got them for brush clearing. So right now we just have standard crops, but I may want to sit down with you and pick your brain on incorporating other meat down the road. So
and they are great mowers.
Yes, they are. They're very, very efficient, very small carbon footprint. So I think you mentioned an important point. I think there's a stereotype, I think, in politics that's changing. I think it's been changing pretty dramatically over the past 5 years. So you're obviously a conservative, you're from West Virginia, but you seem willing to acknowledge that climate change is something we should address. And how do you think we overcome this sort of reluctance or skepticism about the issue? How do we get conservatives to talk about it more openly?
Well, I've never hesitated to say that ever since God created this world, that it has been changing, and the climate has changed over and over through the years that, we've got deserts that used to be oceans, and we've had hotter times, we've had colder times. A lot of it depends upon the tilt of the earth, but our climate does change, and yet we have the benefit now of science. And there are just so many books out there that people need to read, and I can't even tell you, I've got them stacked. Unfortunately, I don't have the time to get through all of them like I would like to, that explain the process and explain what's been going on since the beginning of time. And the more archaeology and the more digging that scientists do, and they realize where it's been cold and where it's been wet, and it's just the nature of what is going on in our world. So as far as being conservative isn't talking about it, we do need to be louder, because our voices haven't been heard as they should have been. Yes, our climate changes. Part of the problem is how many years we've actually been tracking it. And that's just a little teeny tiny bit compared to how long the earth has been here.
Yeah, and a point that I make, I don't know the details of your land, but where I am, the emerald ash borer, which is an invasive species, took out a bunch of ash trees. And so a point that I make is, even if you separate out the question of CO2, anyone that's doing land management understands that there is a relationship between stewardship and the land itself, is that we affect, the land just through normal use.
Absolutely.
And
The Dutch elm disease, multiflora roses. There was a point in time, I think, when the government thought that was absolutely the best thing. It's a good thing you have goats because
Yeah.
they're hard to get rid of.
That's right.
There are so many different issues, and farmers are very concerned about the earth, and they're very concerned about doing the best they can to manage their property. They don't want the government managing their property. They want to take care of it. I mean, they are attached to the land.
That's right. And from my experience, I think whenever you ask a conservative, a farmer, about the principle, and it's a Boy Scout, what's one of the Boy Scout principles, that you leave the campsite better off than you found it. I've never had someone disagree with that. I mean, it's in our DNA as conservatives to take care of what we have and leave it better for the next generation.
Well, that's why I'm in the government. That's why I'm here, is because I want to leave our world a better place.
So what is your take on there's a lot of activity right now in the House. Minority Leader McCarthy, hopefully Speaker to be McCarthy, if things go well in November. He put together an energy and climate task force to tackle some of these issues head on. And there's 6 pillars on that: unlock America's resources, beat China and Russia, let America build resilient communities, American innovation, and conservation with a purpose. What is your take on that, on those pillars?
They're fabulous, and they are so much a part of who we are as America. And I am also on the Climate Crisis Committee. So, I mean, so many of these things are my bread and butter. Innovation has been the core of what's made America great. And, just let us do it. Let us build, get out of the way. We have incredible natural resources. I can talk about the natural resources that I have in my state, but we do need to use words like resilient. We do need to be better marketers of what we believe, but it's let America be great. Let America do what it does. Stop, hampering down what we're doing. Regulation is there to keep people safe. It's not to strangle us. And so, have some laws in place, some rules in place, but let us do what we do well. That's what America, that's what's made us, the best country in the world. And of course, now we've got China and Russia to deal with, and how they're sort of grouping together against us and all of our incredible natural resources. And that's a whole nother conversation.
Right. Yeah, and I know that you've introduced the ESCAPE Act, which is HR 2046, the Energy Security Cooperation with Allied Partners in Europe Act. Tell us a little bit about that piece of legislation, or maybe what you think are the most important 2 or 3 things that the House should do on this issue of energy and climate.
Well, and I started a bipartisan energy export caucus as well, with Jody Arrington and Lou Correa and Henry Cuellar, to be bipartisan, because we have incredible natural resources and we have been energy independent. And the one thing in the world that we should be doing is trading with our allies and supporting them and making it as easy as possible. And the exact opposite is occurring right now. And Pelosi has just stalled the bill. I mean, they're not paying any attention to it at all. So I'm very hopeful, come January, we will actually be able to put some things in place where we make it as easy as possible on our allies to access our wonderful energy resources.
Yeah, and you have a terrific op-ed in Real Clear Energy with Representative Arrington that I read. And we had the opportunity as C3 Solutions to be in Glasgow, Scotland at the UN Climate Conference. And we had the former defense minister, Liam Fox from the United Kingdom, speak to us. And his argument was essentially the contents of your bill is that Europe's, and this is before obviously the invasion happened, is that the West made a decision to play a shell game essentially with voters in European countries, where they, in Germany especially, they said, we're going to go green. But what actually happened is, as they went to renewables, they didn't stop using fossil fuels. They simply bought them from Russia and outsourced, the carbon emissions. But it gave those politicians the chance to say, we're going green. And I feel like Europe has come to their senses to some extent, but the Biden administration hasn't. And why is that? What is not connecting?
Well, and I had spoken to the EU and to the different people in Germany 3 years ago, pointing out the fact to them, what are you doing? Why are you buying gas and oil from people that you all considered your enemies for so long? Why did you set yourself up? And, I went backwards with them through their history, and as well as, because I have come from a state that also has a lot of coal. And what did you do when you stopped producing coal? And they said, well, we took care of our people. Putting people on welfare is not taking care of them. You have people with wonderful talents and wanting to work hard. But I kind of went around the block with what you were saying, because if you bought our oil and our gas, you would reduce the pollution by like 42% or something incredible. I think it's 72 million metric tons of greenhouse gases that wouldn't happen if you were buying ours, because we produce it so well and so cleanly. And what Biden has done by allowing Nord Stream, by cutting off the pipeline with Canada. I mean, we lost 300 West Virginians were working on that pipeline, and they had to come home. And it just seems like we do everything in our power to knock people out of jobs. So I've had many, many conversations with them, and it was long before the invasion on Ukraine.
Yeah, and I think there's a bit of a problem on the progressive left that is, they get very sanctimonious, and there's this belief that they're more serious. But I think that argument is shifting very dramatically, because I think you see very serious consequences of having a naive and unrealistic energy policy, where and intellectually honest climate scientists, there's one that at MIT, Kerry Emanuel, makes an argument that India is going to have to burn coal to prevent CO2 emissions in the future. And the point he makes is a very simple but profound economic argument that you're making as well, that if as an economy grows, it develops a level of wealth that gives it the ability to innovate. And the secret to American greatness is innovation, is economic freedom. And we have a report called Free Economies or Clean Economies that show that countries that embrace these principles of economic freedom, constitutional conservatism, rule of law, limited government, lower taxes, less regulation, those countries are twice as free as less free economies. Because we, as a country develops, again, we transition in a way that doesn't put people on welfare, but creates whole new economies, whole new ways of working. And that's the nature of innovation. That's been going on for centuries.
Innovation gives you freedom. And these countries that have been unable to develop want to do what we've done, and they want to have the ability to do it. And why not continue to do what we do and teach them how to do it cleanly, and how they can raise themselves up as well, instead of depending upon communist countries that'll just continue keeping them down.
That's right.
So it's the freedom that we allow with our innovation. And it's the same with teaching children. They have to fail a few times. You don't just always give everybody a ribbon or an award. You have to understand, and you have to grow. And as we've made mistakes, we've gotten better and better and better in how we handle our natural resources as cleanly as possible. And we will continue to innovate and continue to understand carbon capture and all the different things that we need to do as we move forward. But
Yeah, and
you can't just cut it off. I've lived through that in West Virginia, and I've seen counties go from 100,000 people to in the teens, and what it does to the economy and what it does to their psyche and to the people. Do we stay home where our parents and grandparents are? Do we leave and look for another job? Do we go to another town or another state? And the same thing in Germany,
right.
let people do what they do well and let them thrive.
Right. And that thriving opens the door for other opportunities. That's the point that I think the progressive left misses so often in this debate. And what about the issue of gas prices? What are you hearing from your constituents, and what do you think? I'm sure not. I hear a lot just as I drive around, but
yes, and I see the sticker on the gas pumps when people put that sticker with the finger and Biden pointing, I did this, but we are $4 or $5, to go to double the cost of our gas in over a year and a half period of time. It's just ridiculous. And I make the drive probably a third of the time from Huntington to DC when I get upset with the connections, and we've had a lot of issues travel wise, in the last month or so. And so I just get in the car and drive the 6.5 hours. And so I always have to fill up a couple times coming and going. And it just shocks me when I look at the price and how it just keeps going and going and going. And I think people are going to spend about $2,000 more this year just in gasoline.
yeah. And we hear a lot about this phrase. I'm sure you've heard it, environmental justice, that the left, where's the environmental justice in increasing energy prices for low-income Americans?
There isn't. I mean, all of this justice, the justice is allowing us to do well and stop making up all these things. It's going to be really hot this week. It was hot last week. We had a gorgeous weekend, but this is the end of June. This is the middle of the summer, and it's going to be around 100 degrees and humid. And we're going to have rolling blackouts and brownouts, and it's like they're not thinking ahead. And then all of a sudden it's going to be winter again, and we're going to, what's our cost going to be for our heating and cooling? I'm just talking about gasoline, but what's going to happen when it's cold out?
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's an incredible list of items, and I just feel like the debate. I'm delighted that there's leadership in the House of Representatives to tackle this head on, because I think the other side is totally out of touch with reality, and there's an incredible opportunity to lead with solutions. And I tell the story often. I used to work for a guy named Tom Coburn, who was a doctor. And we fought the healthcare wars for years, and Republicans got very good at beating up on Obamacare, but we never got our heads wrapped around what the alternative should be. I mean, my former boss was an exception because he had a plan, but I think there's a realization among Republicans that there has to be something we're for, because it's very easy to beat up on what the left is doing wrong. It's so in your face. But I just applaud you and your colleagues for putting solutions forward so people understand that there's a different way of tackling this challenge.
There are some wonderful individuals, Gary Palmer. I mean, all of the guys that I'm serving with have wonderful policies, and it's just, that's why we need to be in charge again, is so that we have the message and we have the policies to set forward of what we need to do, but get the government out of the way. They're supposed to support us. They're not supposed to hold us down. And that is what I feel is happening now, is they are just pushing us down and down and down. And why we would ever turn to the what I call the bad players to try to purchase oil. It just blows my mind when we have been energy independent and we have incredible natural resources, and we should support the people who are helping us as opposed to doing what we're doing. But I appreciate you're very good at delivering your message, And I appreciate being able to share with you how we're doing and what we're doing. And of course, listening to any other great ideas that are out there on how we are best moving forward and being the energy leaders that we are, have been, and should be.
That's right. Well, Congresswoman, thank you so much. And I would love to continue this longer, perhaps compare notes again on goats and animals. I hope you get to spend enough time on your farm, because I think that's, but
Well,
that's in all seriousness, that's part of the credibility issues, that there's so many folks on our side that think this way, that are doing the work day in and day out. So I commend you for integrating all of those different skills.
And I appreciate it. I'm more of a weekend warrior now. And that's, you do give up things when you are in public service, and being able to ground myself and watching my sons take their children out to the farm and see the, the animals and participate, particularly when we're worming the animals. You've got 3 generations there, and the 13-year-old and 15-year-old are now strong enough to push those gates, while we're working them through. And so it's really neat. I was nervous the first couple of times they did it. They've gotten faster, and stronger. And it's all
daily challenge.
Yeah, but thank you so much.
But well, and being grounded literally is a good thing. So it's a good word. So, well, thank you, Congressman. This is again Right Voices, John Hart with C3 Solutions, and look forward to another edition.
Thank you.